Okay, so welcome back to this channel. So in my previous video, I have successfully integrated the user registration, and now in this video we will handle the user login. Okay, so let's start. First of all, I go to my in the in the pages. I go in the API in the auth. I create a new file that is going to be Next-Auth.js. So we're going to use a package that is called Next-Auth that will handle all the authentication for us. So I have to install that. So that is going to be npm I next-auth. So I will simply install that. And also I have created a detailed video on Next-Auth in Next.js 13. I will add the link in the description of this video. You can watch that also. In that I have discussed all about authentication. And also I have one video on social authentication. If you want to add the Facebook, Google, GitHub authentication in your application, I also have created that video. So I will add links of both video in the description of this video. Okay, so in this video we will integrate our credentials login. User have to pass in here the email and then the password for the login. Okay, so first of all I import here Next-Auth from Next-Auth slash, I don't need here slash next, so I will use like this. Then I have to import the credentials provider because we have to authenticate the user with the email and the password. Again, if you want to add social login, I have created a detailed video on that. I will add the link in the description of this video. So I will use here credentials from Next-Auth slash providers slash credentials, and let's call it provider. Okay, so credentials provider. Then I have to import in here the user model. So I will import that from the backend slash models slash user. Okay, and the same I have to import here the bcrypt because we have to compare the password if it is correct or not. So you import here the bcrypt, import that from bcrypt.js, and then I have to also import here the dbconnect. So dbconnect from backend config dbconnect. Okay, so now let's type here export const, that is going to be async function, and let's call it auth. In that we have access to the request and the response. Okay, and that is going to be export default. Okay, so let's call it auth, and now in this we have to return here the Next-Auth. So return, I type here await, that is going to be Next-Auth. In that we have to pass all our configurations. So in the Next-Auth we have to pass our options. First of all I will pass in here the request, the response, and then I pass an object in which we will define all our options. Okay, so first of all we have to type here this session, that what session I want to use. In that I will set the strategy to JWT because I want to use here the JWT as strategy. Okay, and after setting up this we have to now set the providers. So now providers is an array. You can define multiple providers like credentials provider, Google provider, Facebook provider at the same time. Okay, so I'll type here providers, and it is going to be an array. So again in this video we will use credentials provider. So I use this credentials provider, and then in that we have to pass in here first of all the function or the method that is called authorize. Okay, now in this authorize we will have access to the credentials that user will pass from the front end. Credentials is the email and the password. Okay, and then the request object. Okay, so now in the authorize we will simply check write our code to validate the user. First of all I type here dbconnect, and then I will get my email and then the password from the credentials. Okay, so I will use here credentials. Now we have our email and the password. Now we have to check the user. So const user is going to be await user dot find one. On the find one I will now in the find one I will pass in here the email. So I will find the user with that email, and I also use here dot select. I will add in here the password. Remember that we have set select to false in the backend models user. We have set it to false, so we all have to compare the password. So that's why we have to select the password also. So in this way we can select the password like this. Okay, so use a dot select plus and then the field name, that is the password. So now we have here our user with the password. I will simply check that if not user, that if user is not present there, then we will simply throw new error, and I will simply pass in here the invalid email or password. So here we have checked the if user exists or not. Now if the user exists in the database, we have to validate the password also. Okay, so for that I simply type here const is password matched. Okay, that is going to be await bcrypt. So we'll use here bcrypt.compare. Okay, in the compare I will pass in here the password that user has passed, and then the user.password that is saved in the database. Okay, so now I will compare the both passwords, and if it is if the both password are same, it is going to be true, otherwise it is going to be false. So I will simply copy this if from here, and I check that if not is password match, we will simply throw this error, otherwise we will simply return the user. That is going to be return user, and that is it. Simply save it from here. Now in our upcoming videos we will define here our callbacks for the session that we want to change the session. We have to save the user role in that. Okay, and all that stuff, and also we have to update the session when the user data is updated, and we will handle all about sessions and callbacks in our upcoming videos. So right now it is enough. We just have to add in here after the array. After this array I will simply set here the pages. Okay, in the pages I will set here that sign in is going to be the route that is going to be slash login. Okay, so if the user is not logged in, so it will move us to this slash login page, which is our login page. And then we also have to define here the secret. Okay, so I use here process.env.next-auth underscore secret. Okay, you also have to copy that from here, go in the next config, and I add that here. And the value you can set here a strong secret, so I will use here coding with Abbas just to show you here. Definitely you have to use here strong secret. Save this one, and now our configuration is completed for our Next-Auth.js. We simply have to create a function. We have called auth. In that we have to use here Next-Auth that we have imported from Next-Auth. In that we have to pass multiple options. First of all, we pass in here the request, response, and then the session. So in this session we will use strategy that is going to be JWT. And then in the providers array we can define multiple providers for different type of login, like credential based login and Google, Facebook, GitHub. So in this video we are using the credentials provider, so I will use that here. In that we will get access to the authorize function that has access to the credentials that contains the email and the password that user will pass from the front end. Then we will select the user and check that if user is not there, we will simply throw the error. Then we will match the password and throw the error if the password are not same, and then simply return the user from here. And after the providers array we have simply defined here pages, and that I have defined the sign in. So if the user is not logged in, it will move the user to this slash login page that we will create in a minute. And also we have to set in here the secret and make sure that you have a strong secret, so I will add the secret also here. We also have to add here the callbacks, JWT sessions and configurations, but we will add that in our upcoming videos when we need that. Okay, so our Next-Auth.js is completed. Now we have to simply go to our front end and send the request to this endpoint. So I close this from here. I go to the pages, app, create a new folder. Let's call it login. In that I create a file that is called page.jsx. Okay, so I go to my components, go in the source, in the components, in the auth, I will select here the login.jsx, copy the JSX from here, go back and put that here, and that is going to be href. Remove this from here, and that is going to be link from next. Save it from here. I open my register page.jsx. The component. Oops, we have to actually go in the component in the auth. There is a new component here that is called login.jsx. Okay, so I'll put all this code right in here. Simply save it, and now I go to here in the register.jsx, and let me use this code here. So I copy that and I put that here. I will simply remove this field from here. We don't need that here, and also we don't need here register user. In fact we don't need here actually the context. Okay, we need here the email, we need here the password, and we don't need here the use fact also. Okay, and then the submit handler we have to log in. So first of all, I will go to my register and I copy this from here for the name, and I use that right here. Sorry, that is email. So I copy this from here and I use that here, and also I use this password from here. So value and then on change, and then after that we also have here the submit handler. So on submit I will use my submit handler. So I copy that also from here. Okay, and I add that here. So now on submit it will come here. Now we have to simply pass in here the email and the password to the backend, and for that I simply have to import the sign in function from Next-Auth/React. Okay, so we don't have to create that, so we have to simply import that from the Next-Auth/React, and we have to import the sign in. So when we will pass in here our email and password, it will send that email and password to the backend in our authorize function. Okay, so on submit I will simply type here const data is equal to await sign in. Now in the sign in I will simply pass in here first of all the provider. Okay, so we know that our provider is credentials, so I use here credentials. Then I have to pass in here the options, and the options I have to pass in here the email, password. So email and then the password. Okay, simply save it from here, and after that I will simply check that if data oops dot error, if there is any error, then I will simply use here toast dot error, and I will pass in here the data dot error. So if there is any error, we will display that. Okay, so we will import that also from React Toastify. Simply save it, and now here I will use this code. So that is going to be login page, and we have to import the login component. Okay, and I remove this register from here. Simply save it, and now if I start my server, so npm run dev. Okay, and also actually I log here the data, so log data, save it, and now if I go back and reload this page, I click on sign. Oops, we have here the await isn't allowed in non-async functions, so you have to make that async. Save it, and now if I go to the sign in, so here we have to import the use state. So use state. Okay, now we have to make that client side component, so use client, save it and go back, and now we have here our email and the password. So if I type here like wrong password and wrong email, if I click on login, and to avoid that I simply go back and I add in here the redirect to false, so it will not redirect us to that default error page. If I simply save it, now if I go back and now if I click here login, so you can see that here we get let me check. If I go to the global provider, we also have to import the CSS for this React Toastify. Okay, let me search that on the Google, and I will copy that, and if I scroll down I have to add this CSS also line, so I add that here. Okay, so if I simply save it, go back, and now if I click here, you can see now we get here invalid email or password in the toast, so our error is displaying successfully here. If I type here correct email and I type here wrong password login, so invalid email or password. Now let's type here correct, so 1 2 3 4 5 6. I click on login, and if I go to the inspect, oops, if I go to the inspect on the console, you can see that here we have the object that contains error to null and OK is true. So this means that we are successfully logged in. Okay, so what I do is simply go back, close this from here. So if there is an error, we will display that. Okay, and I check that if data dot let me check that here, dot okay is equal to true. Okay, because if data dot okay, then we will simply router dot push to slash. Okay, so I have to import from navigation, so that is going to be use router. Okay, so I will type here const router is going to be use router, and then router dot push to the slash. Simply save it, and now if I go back, type here correct email and password, you can log in. So now I am moved to the home page. So now I have to display the current user in the header. So now Next.js maintain a session for us, and to access the session we simply have to go back. I go in the global provider. Okay, I import here the session from the Next-Auth. So I type here import the session provider from Next-Auth / React, and we have to use that in here. Okay, and I will wrap our children in that. Okay, so I put that here, save it. So now we have wrapped the session provider. Now we will have access to the session in our components. So I close this from here. I go to the components layouts, and in the header, okay, I will simply type here the session. So I simply type here const, we will get the data from the session. So I will use here use session, and we have to import that from Next-Auth / React. So after that it will give us that session. So now if I log here data just to show you, so log data, save it, go back. If I reload this page, I go to the inspect console. You can see that here in the object we have here expired, the expiry time of that session. Then we have here the user email and then the username. Okay, so if I simply close it from here, now let's go back. So what I do is I will add here a use effect. So use effect. Okay, and then in that I will type here data, and if data, then I have to set the user. Remember that we have to set the user in the state as well, so we can access that anywhere. Okay, so I will simply have to type here const. I will use here use context and then the auth context. So I have to import from here the user and then the set user. So in that I will simply pass here data dot user. So that will set the user in the state. Now we can use this user to display that on the header. So I scroll down. Okay, so after this cart link I will simply add here that if user exists, or if not user exists, then we have to display the login button. Okay, so I will move this login button in that. Okay, and if that not exists, if the user exists, then we have to simply display the user. So I will move this link inside here, and then here I will display the username. So user dot name and then user dot email. So user dot email, save it. Okay, we also have to type in here the bracket, simply save it. Now if I go back, you can see that here we have our e-name and the email here. And for the avatar I will simply set in here, I will check that if user dot avatar exists, then we will use that. So user dot avatar dot url, otherwise we will use that image, save it. So it will display the default image here. Okay, so now we have here a card and the user that is logged in. Now we don't have here the sign in button. Okay, so we are successfully logged in. We are displaying the user in the header. I hope that you understand. Now again, if I go back, if I go to the inspect on the console, let me go back. Here I log the data. So log data, save it. Now if I go back and reload this page, you can see that here we have here user that only contains email and the name. we don't have here the role and we don't have here the avatar. Okay, so we will handle that later when we will handle our update user. So we will also add those fields in our session. So by default, Next-Auth will only add your name and email in the session. We have to actually write some code to customize our session. Okay, we know that we need here the role of the user. We also need here the avatar of the user. So we will handle that later once we will move on. We will also display here the role and the avatar. Right now it is fine. So I hope that you understand. If you have any question, you can post that in the comment section. I will definitely reply there. And also, if you want to read more about the credentials login, you can simply go to this page on Next.js and you can read that right here. Okay, and you can also find the source code of this video in the description of this video. And again, if you want to implement this social authentication, you can also find that link in the description of this video. Okay, so I will see you in the next lecture.